All right, it's been a long time, but it is time to wrap up the 2023 fantasy baseball season. Jay, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. When you say wrap it up, it was wrapped up weeks ago. This is a long moratorium on that season. The season is dead and gone. There are some burning embers. There are some burning embers that, like we were just talking about me winning the 7th place matchup, it gave me some kind of life, but in the overall death that I experienced in the playoffs.
Jay, you got 7th place in our league. What place did you get in your other league?
I was like dead last or 15th in the other league. So the other league, I finished 4th the first season. Okay. Great showing. This year I finished dead last. Made some moves that will hopefully help me in the next season, and also am hoping to benefit from having Matt Olson in that league. Feel like I could maybe build around him for a couple years.
I rode his coattail.
Yeah, so that's that's one of those burning embers.
Okay,
that
burning
is
embers,
alive
burning
embers.
Of
me, yeah.
Well, you know what? Let's keep those embers burning over the offseason.
For our league, I can tell you what some of them are. Yeah, but it was basically the 7th place victory that was like, oh god, okay, so I can at least win a matchup.
Yes. Hold that thought, Jay. Again, ladies and gentlemen, fantasy baseball advocates. For those of you who don't know, and for those of you listeners out there, listeners of the Fantasy Premier League and listeners abroad, we are looking for more listeners. So please, come follow us. You can find us on RSS. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on YouTube. I believe you can look us up on Google, right, Jay?
Yeah, Google Podcasts.
We are the Fantasy Baseball Advocates. My name is Jason Call. This is Jay White. We are both nurses. We've been nurses for 7, almost 8 years now.
Yes.
And we are
caring professionals who are obsessed with fantasy baseball, and we're ready to take the leap, guys. We want you to come with us.
Yes.
So thank you for listening. And yeah, we're going to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do in this fantasy off season. We're going to build a lot of steam.
Yes, we are.
2024.
Yes. Yeah. And here's why. For those of you thinking, that random listener we have out there that we don't like, please keep listening.
Yeah, they could be in the UK. This is what we
want.
Somewhere else in Japan, and they love baseball.
You can play fantasy baseball on Yahoo, CBS, Fantrax, all of these other different Fangraphs, all of these other different formats. ESPN, I would not highly recommend. That's a hard format to follow, but you can play there too. That being said, I want you guys to know that the link between the fantasy baseball advocates and fantasy baseball is mental health. For everybody out there, we take mental health so seriously, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, and Jay does too. We love this game of fantasy baseball. We love getting on here. We are not being paid. We're doing this for free. We are taking time away from our days to do this because we enjoy this with a passion. And we want you to know that we're going to continue to do this. And we're going to build upon this. And you guys need to understand that it is so important that everybody seeks refuge somewhere in the busyness of our lives. Whether you're a family man, a single person, a woman, a guy, a boy, a girl, all ages.
Yeah.
All cultures welcome. Everybody from everywhere needs to have a safe space to go to. Because life's crazy, and living in this world is crazy. And Jay and I have talked, and we enjoy doing this so much. What better way to link what we do as professionals to our favorite games, but to say we are advocating for you to find some sort of break, mental health break for yourself in life. and ours just happens to be this wonderful game of fantasy baseball.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, Jay, you have anything else you want to add to that?
No, just yeah, always. I love to talk. Yeah, I totally agree. I echo everything you just said, and I feel that, like you alluded to, that life is full of, there is work and toil and struggle and wrestling with things in life. It's part of life. But yeah, I agree. Like, people need a refuge and just a place to have a little shade from all that sun and work and toil. You have to enjoy something. And people enjoy things about their work, but and this is like, as you say, like, this is a bubbling passion for us. This is something that's just, it's now starting to bubble over the surface, take over time and attention and care and attention into what we're doing. That's what we're witnessing right now. So
absolutely. So that being said, today we are going to bid adieu to the fantasy season that was, but with those burning embers that Jay talked about earlier, we're not going to turn too much attention towards the season that was. We'll give a little talk to that. We're going to give you a little preview of what's to come in the off season for us, what we're doing to build upon our product for all of you listening out there. And we're just going to have some conversation about what's going on in the current real world of baseball and how that correlates to our fantasy game as well. But Jay, Halloween's coming up, and I was just wondering, like, what's your favorite, when you were a kid, what was your favorite candy? or even as an adult?
I'm sorry. That just elicited a cough. I love chocolate, so usually it's going to have, like, chocolate in it. That would have been the best candy. I would have considered that the best, even as a child, I think. And now, until this day, I still feel like the candy that has chocolate in it is the real candy, and the other stuff is kind of like imitation candy. But it's not imitation candy. I can appreciate a lot of hard candies or whatever. But that's my preference.
Cool. I think I would agree with you as an adult. My preference as an adult is I love Almond Joys.
Oh man, me too. And so that works out good for us because we can eat the Almond Joys that other people don't want. Yeah. And
are you going to take? Wait. For those of you who don't know, Jay,
I won't take yours.
Hold on, come on, wait, Jay. we had these moments before. Remember we had the Step Brothers moment when the man was like, "Wait, you got a daughter? I got a daughter. They're the same age. Wait, you're a nurse." I'm a nurse. Wait, you love fantasy baseball. I love fantasy baseball. Wait, you like Almond Joys? I love Almond Joys. Okay, here we go, guys. Do you like black jelly beans?
All
right.
Yeah.
I'm safe. Ladies and gentlemen.
We finally found a degree of separation.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen.
Boundaries.
Black jelly beans is my safe space.
You can have all the...
Now, that's Easter candy.
I don't not like jelly beans. I like jelly beans. And when it comes to other candy, we got to pick out the best ones. And jelly beans are, I think, some of them, actually. I like candy corn. And some other people may not like that so
You like
much.
candy corns?
Yeah.
I love candy corn,
I'll eat them.
It's got to be Brock's.
Okay.
Brock's. And I prefer the pumpkins. Do you like the pumpkins?
I like all candy corn.
All candy corn. How about York peppermint patties? Do you like York peppermint patties?
I like them. I don't seek them out. I don't go above and beyond for them.
Okay. You are a true chocolate
connoisseur. I don't not like mint. I like mint, but mint chocolate isn't my favorite combination.
Are you a chocolate peanut butter kind of guy?
Well, yeah. I prefer that.
You like the Reese Cups?
I love Reese Cups. I like just good old Hershey's milk chocolate.
That's good. Yeah.
I like a lot of those things. M&Ms have taken
milk
over my life right now. And they are my favorite, and I didn't see it coming. I was a dark chocolate. I was getting pretty like dark chocolate a lot and like getting kind of bougie with it. But now M&Ms have taken over. They're readily available at vending machines everywhere.
So when you were in Las Vegas
some.
a couple months ago, now for those I've got family out in Vegas, so I seem to find my way out there at least once a year, once every other year. But you recently went to Vegas, right? Did you get the chance to stop at the M&M store on the Strip?
I don't know if we went to the M&M store.
It's one of those things you guys see at least
My family
once.
and I actually just went to the Mall of America recently, and that was also a first for me. That's somewhere I've always wanted to go. And we didn't go to the M&M store there either. We by the time we wanted to, it was too late. Things were closing. So I missed out on that, I think, in both places.
So, Jay, we're talking about Las Vegas and the M&M store. Something that really excites me is the idea of the Las Vegas Athletics.
Oh, man, that is exciting. Actually, it
think
keeps
about
getting
those
more and more
uniforms,
exciting.
it's gonna happen.
The more you get over the negative and the death of something in a certain place, which I mourn. I like as a sports fan, that would be crazy. It's like the Colts. It's like the Colts are now pretty much coming to their own, and they have their own history here now. But there's a whole generation ago where
I'm really glad you're bringing this up.
Totally different thing.
Because you're talking about
Totally
death,
different
and
team.
it's a totally different death when it happens suddenly, or when it's a slow death that happens over time, and you have what's called
right. They're the overnights where they move the team overnight.
Yeah,
and
that's an overnight death. How about this one? The fans of Oakland and the ownership have been at odds for years.
This has been like a grievous mess.
This is one of those where it's like everybody is just ready to move on.
Yeah, well, I mean, the fans want something, though. You know, they don't.
They do deserve better,
right?
But
they don't want to not have a team. So,
but yeah, did you hear the comments by newly retired closer of the Athletics, Trevor May?
No.
Yeah, I didn't specifically hear what he had some choice words apparently for Oakland's ownership.
Okay, well,
but yeah,
that doesn't always look great when the players.
No, I heard it. Well, I heard it got a pretty good reaction. I heard, I
think it's. I don't know. Yeah, it's if there's something like toxic about it, it's going to come out.
It was a toxic relationship between Oakland's ownership and the city of Oakland and the fans.
People are going to come to understand what it was really like other teams that have, I'm thinking of the Redskins, just as an example of like how there was some unsavory things that might have been a part of it, and they ended up they didn't move locations, but it's a whole new name now.
So,
anyways.
Yeah, no. This is going to be such a fun off season talking about this stuff, Jay. We're going to have so much fun. But let's remember some of what was in our own home league, our Fantasy Premier League that ended a month ago. Jay, let's start this way. So Eagle Ridge was the team that won the league. For those of you out there who don't know, we're not going to spend too much time specifically talking about this league, but this is our home league. And it is a deep 16-team league, head-to-head categories format. And for those of you out there listening that don't belong to this league, this is the style that we will be talking about. So in the future, when we are doing position breakdowns, we will be talking about players in respect to a very deep league. And so there's different valuations that happen with players when you play in a 15-plus league versus when you play in a 10-teamer or 12-teamer. So just a little tease there. No, Eagle Ridge won the league. He's won it. It was his first time actually since 2019. So I feel like we as a whole... This guy's a juggernaut. We as a whole did a good job to keep that title away from him for 4 years.
Reign a little bit, but you couldn't be held down. They couldn't be held down forever.
So, Jay, we'll start with you. You got the chance to play him in the first round, and you, by my recollection, had a narrow loss. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about it, but if you will, just maybe talk to us about anything you want to talk to us about that matchup, how you would grade your season.
Okay.
Okay?
It was kind of an ill-fated matchup with Luke. We talked about before. You asked me what I had to do to beat Luke in our playoff preview, and I said I had to put my best foot forward on offense. I feel like I sort of didn't do that. I shifted and I moved away from my deep bench. Should have kept my deep bench going into day one of the playoffs. I shifted towards pitching, picked up some pitchers. Ultimately, my insecurities with pitching got the best of me.
You're pointing at me. Why
in the
you
way that I
pointing at me, Jay?
managed my team. Well, because you've been harping on pitching all year.
So
And
it's
I
my fault
failed
that this happened to
do
you?
what you laid out, which was, a winning basically strategy. I mean, I was on the other end most of the season, had a deep hitting bench. I believed that it could help me win matchups. And it didn't really come to fruition during the regular season. But if I would have stayed with that going into the playoffs, I would have been more ready day one going into that, because that was an off day for some teams. I couldn't even fill my lineup Monday or Tuesday because of benchings that happened on my roster. So I felt up against it from Monday when those games started. I was in shock and horror from the very beginning. It was an immediate death that happened, and I was trying to crawl out of this grave that I dug for myself. So with that, I'm getting very morbid. But the point is, that I didn't have.
We love this game with the passion, people. Remember that.
So I've gone back and looked at every decision I could have made as far as managing. In the week, and I still, no matter if I would have done it as I'm describing, I still would have lost on offense. Mm-hmm. And as Luke said, I don't know if he said it in the chat or when. The truth is that my stars let me down in that, and maybe Vlad specifically he pointed that one person out. But basically my stars let me down. I could have gotten more production other ways, maybe on offense that was needed and didn't. But ultimately I would have lost on offense anyways. With pitching, I never had any, as I got into the in-week management, I don't really have any regrets about how I did it. I had to get some volume, and I actually feel like I did a decent job of that. They ended up being, had a bunch of people that had starts later in the week, and they just didn't do very well. They could have easily done better if things would have just broke one way or the other. But I took my chances with Trevor Williams and all these other guys that I just basically had to. And I actually feel good about.
I'm glad you pointed a player out.
I got him actually thinking I had a chance later in the week, but it just didn't,
So
those starts didn't end up being quality.
Players such as Trevor Williams matter in our league.
They do.
They do. They really, truly do. Now, Jake, can you give us a grade for you? Not your matchup.
Season or playoffs?
Yeah, give me a season grade. That's one matchup. You had a bad matchup. It's hard. He ended up ultimately winning. He beat me in the next round, okay?
Dude,
it just is what it is. But
right
grade
now,
your season.
Honestly, I've got the critical eye right now for some of the trades that were made and some of the way that I managed it over the course of the season. I'm B-.
I was going to say, can I get you to think
try not to be too hard on myself.
No, it's okay. Think from this way. Think of what you expected going into draft season back in March. Think of how your season played out, and then think of how your season ended.
Right.
And only grade yourself based upon that. Don't be too critical of yourself based upon the intricacies of the season, because everybody has their ebbs and flows, as evidenced by the fact that the Braves, for the second year in a row, just manhandled all of baseball for over 162 games, and they're ousted by the Phillies to playoff. Mm-hmm. And then now,
they ran into the wrong
here we
team
are.
at the wrong
We're looking at a World Series It's almost like watching a 5 seed and a 9 seed from an NCAA tournament final.
Yeah.
These are just the last 2 teams standing. Now, granted, I think the Rangers, if they win, they've got a claim to say that they were the best team. Okay.
Well,
do I think that they were the best team head and shoulders? No. But do I think they were one of the best teams? Yeah. Now, if the Diamondbacks win it, no, they were not one of the best teams. However, kudos to them. They've been playing with house money the whole time. And were never supposed to be any good. So the fact that they're even here, that sports us. So,
well,
sorry, all of that perspective aside, take a look at your season going into it, how it played out and how it ended. How would you grade yourself?
I mean, I have to stick with what blurted out of my mouth, which is like B-, because it was okay. I was resting between a C+ and a B-, and the reason I say that is because I was very entrenched in my position this year. I had it was a season-long plan, like, basically, it was a somewhat, like, well-thought-out kind of thing, strategy, and it worked to an extent. I expected to, wanted to win my division, and I was able to do that. It took the whole season. There was a lot of anticipation, or not anticipation, but you're waiting for the fruit of that strategy. And it actually showed up when I needed it to win the division and make the playoffs. So I can't be too hard on myself in July, and when it mattered, I was able to win matchups and win the division. Before that, and actually on the season as a whole, it was pretty ugly. I went back and looked at all my matchups. They were all so hard fought. There were no clear victories that I had during the season. Maybe later in the season when I had some big weeks but it was I just got the crap beat out of me for 20-some weeks.
Hey,
looking back,
that is fantasy baseball. It's a survival. It's a gauntlet.
This whole season was like that, and so making the playoffs was great, and ultimately it was so grueling, and immediately not pleasant to be on. Or you know what I'm saying? It was oh my god, it was. I mean, how else would it be? But it was a dogfight.
That's the thing. There's something to be said for that. It's a gauntlet. So do you think that maybe there's a correlation between the fantasy game and the real game there? Because how is it the Braves can win 100-plus games year in and year out and get ousted in the first round? You almost want to be, I think, from a history of watching baseball and playing fantasy baseball, you want to be challenged.
Yeah.
Week in, week out. You got to keep it going, right? You got to keep that hunger going. Those teams, I saw so many times back in the Peyton Manning days with the Colts where they would get the number 1 seed and lose because they got a bye in the first round, and then you're taking a couple weeks off. You're rusty, and then you get taken by a team that's hot.
Part of the connection is the attention to detail in the ownership, in the management of these teams, the ownership.
Yes.
The Diamondbacks trading for Gabriel Moreno and Lourdes Gurriel Jr., trading away Dalton Varsho to get that, and those guys showed up. Gurriel was so one of my things with this season was I did not believe we talked about some of the
his defense is what really showed up
going into the season. This is what I'm saying. That's one of my big things was I was the reason I felt like Jake McCarthy was going to have so many at-bats going into this season. And
people go back and listen to the first podcast. It's hilarious. Jake McCarthy's going over the 500 at-bats. He's the greatest thing.
Home runs, stolen bases.
Oh, man.
And battery average, anything.
Alec Thomas overtook him pretty early.
And I did not believe that would happen. I really felt like he'd earned some playing time over him, and that Alec Thomas was going to struggle even for playing time. Didn't believe in the Diamondbacks' ability to fill the outfield, even with Gurriel, because I didn't know, was Corbin Carroll, how much center field and what kind of center field is he going to play? How much can you You utilize that during the season or in the playoffs.
Corbin Carroll's
between the outfield and DH. I knew they had a bunch of guys, but I guess I didn't believe that it could shake out as well as it did. And I felt like they needed contributions from people like Jake McCarthy, and they ended up not.
Do you foresee any way Birdlaw entertains? I think he has to now. His values
the ultimate value,
trading Corbin Carroll
when they're like a top 50.
This his value is skyrocketing.
Let's start with top 50, and then how much higher are you willing to?
Oh, Corbin Carroll's.
Think of trading. If
we're playing redraft right now, and we're drafting for next year, and people are drafting out there. If you're playing at if you're playing at the NFBC, or if you're playing best ball, or some of those a lot of the expert leagues, they're drafting now and in November. And I do plan on jumping into those waters next month, Jim. I'm going to try to do an FBC draft.
Yeah,
but for those of you who don't know, that stands for National Fantasy Baseball Championship. You
want to do some of this without any preseason rankings? Yeah, you ready to dive in right now?
No, I want to wait till around Thanksgiving so I get about a month. Yeah, I can get a month's worth of ADP. And
I feel like you need weeks after the season just to kind of decompress and
you do
start taking in new stuff.
You know me,
different stuff.
I'm decompressed already
because I'm still processing this season in the playoffs.
Please do me a favor. After today's show, you're done. You're turning the page. You're looking forward to 2024.
Well, I needed a break. I filled this whole last few weeks with work and work and outside of work. I was doing a bunch of stuff. I couldn't stop.
Ladies and gentlemen,
I didn't even have time to think about it.
This is why we need our mental health refuge, our breaks.
Yeah.
Our lives are so crazy busy. We need to be able to talk about fantasy baseball today.
So, in one of the fantasy takeaways was it kind of goes to what we were just talking about, right? What veteran, top 50 guy could I throw at you right now to make you trade Corbin Carroll? What would it take?
So, if I was a Corbin Carroll owner, first of all,
what amount of...
I would have to consider trading him, because if you're smart, it doesn't mean just because you're considering trading somebody doesn't mean in the back of your mind you're not thinking there's no way I'm trading this guy.
Well, yeah,
that's something I've learned over the years.
I can think in the back of my mind those decisions defy what you could.
Yes.
Sometimes the truth ends up being better than you could have possibly imagined. You never thought you'd trade that person, but you have to. You just realize that it is the right thing to do for your team.
Here's a barometer.
I didn't want to trade Carlos Rodon. I thought maybe I should never trade him, because of what he showed, that he finally got healthy and put together this. But I knew that I should, because this is what people are offering me something really good for. There's enough interest, and it just felt, as a business decision, I realized it was the right thing to do.
Okay. It's a good point.
That's a comparison.
Yes.
Top 50, we're talking about those interchangeable
business decisions that we do make in our game.
Baseball players.
We may be playing a game, but we are running the ship. We are the manager. We are the general manager. It's like there is in-game managing and week managing. Looking at matchups to decide maybe I'm taking this star player out because he's slumping, and this guy that's on my bench that can play left field.
Some slumps are big enough that you have
playing in
acknowledge
Coors Field against the opposite, against the same-handed pitcher.
Manny Machado is a good example of that for this season that I had to get comfortable with, that I might actually have to bench him for a little bit because he was not providing anything. But my whole belief in him wasn't shattered, but I had to get comfortable with the fact that it got to the point where I was like, I think I need to bench him to get more production out of my team. But that's okay. It doesn't mean that I hate Manny Machado and I'm instantly going to trade him. I entertained that thought this year, for sure. And throughout the whole time, because now we're dealing with an injury. Now we have a injury that we might be getting off-season surgery for, and what does that mean going into next year? Where am I going to be next spring?
Well, I still think having Machado and Vlad Jr. at your corners, you should still feel pretty solid.
I do feel still
you
good,
should.
You know?
But let's take this back to your original question. If you're the Corbin Carroll owner, you have to entertain the idea of what he could get you on the open market. Now, here's why. Like I said, I alluded to this. You may be thinking in the back of your head, there's no way. There is no way I'm trading Corbin Carroll. But here's a barometer for you. 2 years ago, well, a little over a year ago, when I was kind of out of it in our home league, I wasn't completely out of it, but it wasn't looking good. So I traded a keepable Fernando Tatis, and in return, I got a first, second, and third round pick.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
On top of that, I got Christian Javier, who at the time was was doing great. He was doing great last year, and I kept him to my frustrations this year. I still might keep him next year, but still, I got him.
Yeah,
so I got a keeper, those three picks, and I got Ryan Mountcastle, who I traded him to you, so I got value for him.
It's so funny. I was already thinking the name Ryan Mountcastle when you were saying what you were saying, because of these are the fringe keepers that end up and I say fringe with all due respect because they end up being so important.
So what does a keepable Corbin Carroll net you then? And to
Christian Javier, Ryan Mountcastle. Those are, I'm calling them fringe. But I'm saying fringe.
Javier's
top
fringe
150.
now. He wasn't fringe when I acquired him.
No, he was like
solid.
It was like top 100 more than top 150.
Yeah.
So,
well, for perspective's sake, Corbin. Let's see the guy in our home league that has him also has Rafael Devers and Fernando Tatis. Corbin Carroll, depending on the way our league goes based upon Yahoo's pre-draft ranking. Now, we may be switching formats, but that's something we'll talk about later. I'm sure you heard that through the rumor mill.
Yahoo is all I know, man.
I'm excited. I'm excited.
I'm not closed-minded about any of it. I'm excited to
I'm just
have
excited
a conversation
to grow the
about
league.
it. Yeah.
And that's another thing.
I'm open-minded going into it. I used to be like, oh, I'm not comfortable with going away from Yahoo, but I've had a few years to think about it.
Yeah, so
I used to be uncomfortable with that prospect because, like I said, that's all I knew.
If Corbin Carroll's a 1-year rental, I still say he nets you a solid, like a 1 and a keeper.
Looking for a player and a
right?
pick. Right, because just a pick's not worth it. Just a player is not, unless it's the best player. Yeah.
I mean, you got to at least look at that package I told you. A 1, a 2, a 3, a solid keeper, and a French keeper. That's insane. This guy is 5'8", nothing, 180 pounds. You don't think he's got that kind of power, but the way he moves his body.
Yeah, it's the Brian Reynolds. It's the guy who can do everything.
The one
we
that
talked
got
about
away.
this on our previous podcast about these vertically challenged people that are like dynamic baseball players. Jose Altuve. Which I was gonna say when we were talking about what veteran would I have to give you, but he's too old in terms of fantasy. Like, you don't want Jose Altuve. But he's a perennial top 50 guy, but you don't want that for Corbin Carroll. He's 10 years younger.
Jay, in a deep league, it's the older guys that tend to give you value because they get overlooked because everybody wants the young guy.
That's the story.
How do you think JD Martinez did this
year?
Fantasy
playoffs.
Everybody forgot about him. DHing at 36 years old. He had a down year in the previous year. People thought his best year's been.
I didn't forget about him.
He hit
kicking dirt.
36 home runs and 103 RBIs or something like that.
I think Kicking Dirt drafted him and kept him all season long. He certainly didn't forget. Like, he saw the value. I think
he's got to be
extreme value.
Else. Yeah, because
he fell.
I think Shohei Ohtani is going to the Dodgers in the offseason, so I don't think Martinez.
I think they've made room as an organization and probably money-wise they could for him too.
They have the money. There's only so many teams in this league that have the money for Shohei Ohtani. Sorry, guys. Yeah. We're going off on a tangent here. So,
this started with
talk about, Jay. We got so much to talk about this offseason.
We got off on the Arizona Diamondbacks. Like that was just one of my fantasy takeaways from like the baseball playoffs was like, we just talked about some of the veterans, and you saw a lot of baseball veterans.
Up to stock.
Great story. That is a great baseball story. That
Gabriel Moreno's up to stock.
Ketel Marte gets to play in a World Series, and I think that's awesome. In fantasy baseball, we care about the statistics, and like there have been like such high expectations around Ketel Marte, like, but in real life, he just showed up in a big way. And love when these people become clutch athletes, real awesome baseball players. Fills his position. How well does he fill his position?
I got a question.
On second base.
Why we talk about Ketel Marte? Do me a favor. Look
what
on
real life value is that? They had to pay him some money.
Yeah,
too.
they did.
But
look on our professional communications Slack page and see who's active. We may be able to make a live on-air phone call.
Andrew Wax.
Oh, did he join?
Yeah, I think he
Is
did.
that shirtless?
Yeah.
That's shirtless.
Yeah. I think he did. Which is like our league is transitioning to Slack and almost everyone now is on. It took me a couple weeks. Like I tuned out kind of to the chat and stuff for a while because I just, like I said, I got so busy. And it's always like baseball builds up for me all season long. And then I actually, like, as far as a fan of baseball, I've had to manage my like emotions with a long season. As a fan, sometimes I get, and I've actually like, I don't let myself get excited about spring training even. Like I have this thing where it's like, dude, I can only start so early. And I'm talking about watching games. Like I'm like, I could watch spring training right now, but I'm not going to because I don't want to start reading into it and getting excited because I know it's a long season. And in my life, like as I've been obsessed with baseball and fantasy baseball since I've been obsessed with baseball since I was a kid, but with fantasy it started in 2007, and I've watched baseball and I get so into it, and then I get tired and exhausted in like August. Then it even sometimes if the intensity was so great, July start getting exhausted.
You gotta keep it going. You gotta keep it.
Now, as a fan of baseball, some of the things that have kept me going in the fall was seeing over the years, seeing the Detroit Tigers in the playoffs, late in the playoffs. It was just something special about that. So there's just certain things that would get me like, oh, I'm watching this. And of course, the Cubs, when they won the World Series, like I was watching those games, like I would go somewhere. Just to be somewhere, just to watch that game. And the things that happened, Javier Baez hitting, clutch homers, like the super memorable moments.
Okay, Jay, this is fun. This is our off-season bid-to-do show.
But yes, I'm trying to slow burn and have something left for the playoffs when I watch baseball. It's hard to do.
It is, but
I was able to take a little time off, and now when I watch these playoff games, it has been so exciting to watch. And I will say that I've had to recap some of these games. I've mostly watched the NL games, and I'm a Bryce Harper fan, and I just really enjoy watching him in these big moments. He is great. I think that he is great. I think that other great people, like Mike Trout, is also great. But Mike Trout's a little robotic, I think, to watch. Bryce Harper brings out the best in like everything about these big moments, and he shows all this emotion too. And like that, I'm not saying that you have to do that.
I think I'm just saying that it is just wired differently.
He is, and there is nothing wrong with that. He is great.
To be honest with you,
great.
If you want him,
of course,
to be in the spotlight,
I even have to say it.
He needs to be off the Angels.
It's exciting to watch.
He needs to be off the Angels. Everybody in the world. You don't have to be an avid baseball fan to understand that.
What if he was in Seattle?
Look,
and they're like,
I've said this for years. I've said this for years. There's two places I would love to see Trout go. Obviously, being a Cubs fan, Chicago is one of them. And I think he would be great on the north side. But to be honest with you, the place I always thought he'd end up would be Philadelphia because he's from New Jersey. And man, just the sheer prospect of they could pull up a trade and have Trout and Harper in the same lineup. God, with Schwarber.
I mean, the less athletic he gets, and you would think he would stay in the American League, but right now we'll see.
Well, now the National League is the DH. But
it doesn't matter anymore.
See, here we are. We're just talking about our baseball fandom here on October 25th.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about some real baseball stories. Ketel Marte was a great one. Adolis Garcia brings to light the fact that one of my themes of recapping the real life playoffs is there's all these veterans, which it just isn't terribly exciting for fantasy. The young guys like Corbin Carroll and to a lesser extent Evan Carter or somebody that's what you get excited about for the next.
Those guys are going to... Corbin Carroll's on a different
it's a different level.
He's a top 3 pick.
I'm trying to find someone else young to pick out because these other guys are...
Oh, for those of you who don't know...
Adolis Garcia is a very old rookie, and he's 31 now.
Well, he was a rookie a couple years ago. I picked him up the wire when he had a great year. People were like, no, this isn't going to happen. And I rode his coattail, and then he got cold September, and I just didn't keep him.
Kudos to Rosie for keeping him, and
I think I traded him too.
Rosie just didn't get to the value, just didn't get to translate into a bunch of winning and success. But Rosie had a good team the whole season. We talked about that.
We talked about that in other.
It's
podcasts.
His offense was, there was nothing wrong with it. It just didn't fire on all cylinders or something
and that's part of the in-season management and the in-game management that has to take place. You can have a studly offense, which I alluded to in our July offensive updates preview. I believe I ranked his offense second in the league. But if you don't do the correct tinkering, the in-season, the in-week management, you're not going to maximize your team's capabilities, and therefore you may be left out come playoff time, or you may be not advanced as far as you're capable of.
Well, maybe Francisco Lindor and Trey Turner as your shortstop and DH, maybe that he could have gone somewhere with that. That's 2 pretty good shortstops to have.
Francisco Lindor should have been traded. But it was hard because Lindor...
As soon as I started saying that, he started producing a utility hitter.
Trey Turner had a cold first couple of months and then turned it on at the end of June.
Yeah, sure.
And then
both of those guys are everything you could even want in a DH.
But
let alone a shortstop.
But he needed help on the pitching side, and he could have flipped one of those guys for a solid hitter and a solid pitcher. And a pick, if he would have done the right thing. There's more to it. But anyways, that's not what we're here to talk about.
He was another playoff hero. Bryce Harper was a playoff hero. Nick Castellanos. But as I said, those guys are veterans. So it doesn't spark your fantasy.
How about Kyle Schwarber
real life
taking the lead for most left-handed home runs hit in the playoffs? I mean, Kyle Schwarber is... It might be I said left-handed. Was Reggie Jackson right-handed? I'm sorry, guys. I'm 40 years old. So I did not grow up watching Reggie Jackson. I believe Kyle Schwarber now has the record for most home runs hit in the playoffs.
Yeah, he was a left-handed.
Okay, so maybe it's most left-handed home runs hit in the playoffs.
Right.
I could stand corrected. I don't truly know.
There was a lot of Mr. Octobers. That's what I'm saying. The story was all these veterans really showed up. Altuve was winning games for his team.
Bregman, he showed up.
Bregman helped them win games. in the playoffs. So that was like the story and like we said, like it was basically the teams that were playing the best on both sides right now, or who made it. But it became arguable. 2 7-game series, and the Astros were doing pretty well. So it was like arguable which one of those had a better offense, or is like.
I think the Rangers up is.
I know. Well, they ultimately are like. In these, like the Diamondbacks and the Rangers, like I lean on the offense, but like the Diamondbacks pitching was clutch. They clutch Game 7, pitching and other parts of the series. That obviously plays huge into it.
It really does.
But it goes back to their offense and like how they can score runs.
Yes, absolutely. It's been a pleasure to watch.
Altuve can hit.
But you're alluding to something.
I think he made it one like kind of base running mistake, maybe in the playoffs, but that doesn't take away from anything.
He made up for it though. There's a couple things I want to talk about to wrap this show up. We are going to give you. It's only going to take a couple of minutes. We're going to give you a preview of what's to come, but I want to allude to this. There are 2 things here. I'm going to hit on this if you don't mind. Number 1. Watching baseball, real baseball now in the playoff baseball now versus the way it was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Not a lot of commentary on this, just something I noticed. There's no workhorse starting pitchers that you can rely on to come in October and shut an offense down. I've yet to see it. The best, those workhorses are a dying breed. My favorite pitcher of all time.
They are like a dying breed, but we saw a few of them.
But they didn't do what they used to.
Zach Wheeler had a really good showing in the playoffs.
But how many innings can he be relied on? The bullpen comes in the 6th inning.
Yep.
Pablo Lopez threw a 7-inning game in Minnesota. They're sprinkled in.
Right. It's
Most
like
of the
Justin
time, even
Verlander
the best pitchers.
6.
There you go.
6.
He's one of the last. Him and Max Scherzer are one of the last 2 workhorses.
Yep.
And they're only going 5 innings, and they're giving up a couple of runs.
And the Diamondbacks got relievers to come in and throw 7 straight.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So baseball now,
lights out.
It may just be where we are with what MLB's done to the ball and the rules and the games favor the offense. I don't know. I think it started back with Andrew Miller and the Indians.
Yeah.
When they were the Indians before the Guardians, when they were playing the Cubs.
These trends were going on back then.
He would come in as a fireman.
Yep.
And then it was then.
Totally.
It was around 2016-ish when people started going to their bullpens much earlier in the
John
game.
Lester,
and that started in the playoffs.
Him throwing 6 in the playoffs was like, that was an accomplishment. That felt like such a big accomplishment.
Exactly.
Because he was an older veteran.
It never used to be like that. If you get a starting pitcher who throws 6 innings of 2 runs or less,
he just expected that of himself, and he made it to that threshold.
It's an amazing playoff performance.
Amazing performance.
But for us, playing the year throughout, you got to go 6 innings at least and give up 3 runs or less to get a quality start.
How much did you appreciate those starts from John Lester back then in 2016? Those were
that's what I'm saying. That's about when that breed died out.
Zach Wheeler, I enjoyed watching him do that this season.
For the Indians, was doing it. Verlander did it forever. Roy Halladay. Do you remember some of those matchups between Chris Carpenter and Roy Halladay like 12, 13 years ago when those Philly Cardinals?
Montgomery put up some great playoff performances this year.
He did. So there was
Speaking of veterans,
but not nearly as many.
It goes back to my veteran thing that you counted on him in the playoffs to make some of those starts. When you are choosing between 3 or 4 guys sometimes.
Well, here's the other flip side of that coin is, and you got moments like you count on Christian Javier to be Mr. Big Game, and he came through in Game 3. He really did when they needed. They were down 2, but he gives you 1 out and then gives up like 4 or 5 hits and 3 runs already, and you're down before you've even come to bat. That's rough. playoff pitching's rough, guys. I don't have much else to say about that. That's just my observation. It's not a pretty landscape for starting pitchers in the real life playoffs.
Yeah,
However,
seriously.
I'm going to take that. Jay, you talked about...
You just highlighted, like, how you have guys that are expected to have low ratios. And whether that, like, translates, like, that's...
I still say volume is key, but it's a different game. In real... That's fantasy. In real life, the volume is still key in the regular season in real life. But what I'm alluding to is in the playoffs,
you might
it's a
only
beast of a
need
different
three
play.
of those guys.
Those offenses, and those offenses that you're going against the playoffs, your best two pitchers, if they get you 5 innings and you've only given up a couple of runs, they did their job.
Yeah,
if that happens in the regular
relievers,
season, it's looked down upon as a bad outing. Like, for example, let's take Framber Valdez. He got lit up in the playoffs.
Exactly
the whole
name
playoff.
I was going to bring up. He's supposed to have good ratios and not give up hits.
Yeah, if he goes 6 innings and gives up 3 runs, he gets us a quality start, but that may still be frowned upon during the regular season as a bad outing. Now, if he goes 6 innings and gives up 3 runs or less in the playoff, that's a great outing.
Yeah.
But he couldn't do that. He got lit up.
Right.
Several times. It's a different beast.
Part of what we're talking about is how it's the I don't know what it is. If it's the high 90s fastball and the strikeout potential that these guys have to have. Zach Wheeler has that. He can still throw 95, 96 and strike you out up in the zone.
I think those guys, it's trend. They watch the offenses. They watch
Valdez,
pitch
that's not his
by
game.
pitch by pitch. I was listening to the commentators from one of the Christian Javier's last start where he just went 1 out. Like, okay, so his sequence of events, like, even from the viewer, you should be able to pick this up. He missed high on a fastball on the first pitch of every at-bat that he had. So there's a trend developing. He's trying to go in with a 4-seamer high to start the count. Now, I don't know if he's missing high because I wasn't watching it. I was listening on the radio. Or if he was purposefully going high, trying to get him to swing.
Yeah.
And start to command his zone.
Sure.
But all I know is he missed high with each one of those, got behind the count, and each one of those, with the exception of Simeon, where he got bailed up by a ground ball, got a homer, a double, or a base knock on him. In the playoff, they watch. You call the regular season a grind for us fantasy baseballers. It's a pitch by pitch sequencing grind. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
Sorry guys, ran over.
And
there.
it comes down to what you have to choose from and whether you got it working for you. And
yes,
if you can throw that for a strike, whole different ball game.
Jay, I'm glad we've had all this to talk about today, but I kind of want to wrap this show up. We've got a lot to look forward to in 2024. I'm not going to talk too much. My season ended well. You know, I won my first division. I won some money in the league this year. I won a playoff matchup against a team who I think everybody thought was the hottest team of the league when the playoffs started. And I had to do some in-week strategies that I wouldn't normally do, but they ultimately paid off. I executed a game plan, so I won my first playoff matchup. I ultimately lost to the guy who won the league. In my matchup with him, it was close up until Saturday. We were 8-8, and he started to pull away. I think your matchup with him was just a little bit closer, but I was close. Ultimately, I just did not have enough on offense at the end to get there. But I turned around, and the next week, I won 3rd place. So the fact that I got 3rd place, I won a division, I won some money. It was a successful season.
I think it goes back to your assessment of Luke having the best overall offense.
Yep. Most complete. Most complete.
At
the time, he really did not. Showed. I gave Bird-Law the number 1, but I told you there's a caveat. 1 through 9, each position, he was the most complete offense, which is why it was hard to keep up. Keep that in mind, folks.
Very hard.
So, that being said, I would grade. I don't know. I don't like to heap praise upon myself, so I'll give myself a B plus because I always want to leave room for improvement, and I would like to win the league. I would like to be in the finals. Maybe I could. There's an argument for me giving myself an A minus. Maybe some people think I'm being too hard on myself. Whatever, you know. I looked at it as a successful season, but I've already turned the page. I'm looking forward to 2024. Now, that in mind, this product that Jay and I, the Fantasy Baseball Advocates, have started, we would like to pull in more listeners. So this is what our off season is going to look like. We're going to make our best effort, life, family, and everything aside, to give you 2 podcasts a month. 2 in November, 2 in December, 2 in January, 2 in February, and 2 in March. For a grand total of 10 podcasts leading into the next season. Now, what we're going to cover in these podcasts, we're going to do positional breakdown. Jay and I are going to rank the top 20 of each position based upon deep league category settings. So with that in mind, our rankings may differentiate a lot from some of the experts. Not crazy amounts, but they will differ. Especially when you get into the pitching, which that's the deepest pool. Don't worry, Jay. We won't get into that until March. But with the pitching, there's a little bit more difference when you're in a deep league where guys who may be able to give you that volume, but they may not have the high strikeout upside are more valuable in our league because we need the volume.
Yeah.
But stuff like that. So anyway, in November, we are going to have some fun. We are going to do a podcast from a location to be disclosed. We're not going to give it away yet. That will be given away when we are there. And we are going to talk about catchers. And then we're going to talk about first baseman. And that's our November podcast. In December, we're going to talk about second baseman. And we're going to talk about third baseman. Christmas gift of a third baseman that you can plug in your lineup and stick all year round is a good Christmas gift because that is a position where it drops off fast. And then in January, we'll celebrate the new year.
Luke had the best offense with people like Joan.
Don't worry, Jay. We're going to have our time to overtake Luke. It's off season matters. In January, we're going to talk about shortstops. And we're also going to talk about relief pitchers because we want to leave the 2 deepest positions for February and March when it's really getting into spring training and draft season. We're going to talk about outfielders and starting pitchers. And then we'll wrap our off-season podcast up right before the start of our draft, probably sometime in like mid-March. Maybe we'll throw an next one in there at some point. But we're going to do a mock draft. Just like we did last year. It's going to be a fun off season, guys. Happy Halloween. You'll hear from us here in a couple of weeks for a November podcast talking about catchers. Till then, we look forward to hearing from you. Be safe. Be well. This is Fantasy Baseball Advocate signing off.
Bye-bye.